He opened the security app expecting to catch her slipping up. 11 caregivers before her had failed, stolen from him, betrayed him, left his children worse than they found them. So when he saw those 4 wheelchairs sitting empty in the middle of the living room, his stomach dropped. Then he saw them, his 4 paralyzed children, standing, taking trembling steps, walking toward her outstretched arms. Marcus Ashford's phone slipped from his hand, his back hit the wall, and the man who had accepted impossible as final watched it shatter on a screen in his own living room. 3 years ago, Marcus Ashford lost everything that mattered. His wife Elena died during childbirth. 37 minutes after delivering quadruplets, she was gone. No warning, no goodbye. Just a cold hospital room and 4 premature babies fighting for their lives in separate incubators. Marcus held her hand until it went cold. Then he walked out to meet his children. Sophia, Nathan, Oliver, Grace. 4 tiny bodies, 4 uncertain futures. The doctors didn't wait long to deliver the second blow. "Mr. Ashford, we need to prepare you." The neurologist's voice was clinical, measured. Based on the brain imaging and muscle response tests, all 4 children present with severe cerebral palsy, the kind that settles into muscles and bones and doesn't let go. Walking is highly unlikely, possibly never. Marcus heard the words, but they didn't land. Not then. He was still burying his wife in his mind. Weeks passed, then months. The babies didn't improve. They didn't hit milestones. They sat in custom wheelchairs, small bodies still, eyes distant. Marcus hired the best therapists money could buy, flew in specialists from Switzerland, from Japan, from the Mayo Clinic. He purchased equipment that cost more than most people's homes, installed a $20,000 hydrotherapy pool, converted an entire wing of his Connecticut estate into a state-of-the-art therapy center. Nothing changed. The children didn't walk. They barely moved. Sophia's head lolled to one side. Nathan's hands stayed clenched in permanent fists. Oliver stared at walls. Grace kept her eyes closed, like the world was too much to take in. And Marcus, alone in his mansion, started to accept what the doctors said. His children would never stand, never run, never chase each other through the hallways like he'd once imagined. He buried that hope right next to Elena. Then came the caregivers, 11 in 22 months. The first quit after 3 weeks, said watching the children was too depressing. The second spent more time scrolling her phone than engaging with the kids. Marcus fired her on the spot. The third seemed perfect, experienced, credentialed, compassionate, until he found out she'd sold photos of his children's medical equipment to a tabloid for $800. The headline read, "Tech Billionaire's Tragic Quadruplets, a Life Sentence in Wheelchairs." After that, something broke inside him. One caregiver stole prescription medications from the house pharmacy. Another accessed his financial accounts and disappeared with $43,000. A sixth brought her boyfriend into the house during night shifts. The seventh took videos of the children during vulnerable moments, diaper changes, feeding struggles, and posted them to a private social media group mocking disabled kids. Marcus found that one himself late at night doing the kind of internet deep dive that comes from complete sleeplessness and absolute paranoia. He fired her at 2 a.m., had security escort her out immediately. Each one came with a smile and credentials. Each one left with his trust bleeding out behind them. Marcus stopped seeing people. He saw risks, liabilities, threats. He installed cameras in every room, every hallway, every corner of the estate. 47 cameras total, feeding live to his laptop, his phone, his tablet. He watched the footage at night, rewinding, zooming, looking for the lie, the angle, the betrayal he knew was coming. Control became his only protection. So when Angela Bailey walked through his front door, 31 years old, quiet, composed, with a nursing degree and unremarkable references, Marcus didn't see a person. He saw the 12th failure waiting to happen. The interview took place in his office. Marcus didn't stand when she entered, didn't shake her hand. Sit. He gestured to the chair across from his desk without looking up from her file. Angela sat. She didn't fidget, didn't try to fill the silence with nervous chatter. Marcus flipped through her background check. You worked at Mercy General for 4 years. Pediatric unit. Why did you leave? Burnout, Angela said simply. I needed a change of pace. Private care seemed like a better fit. Previous private care experience? 2 years with an elderly patient, Alzheimer's. She passed 6 months ago. Marcus's eyes flicked up. References from that family? In the file. He'd already checked. They were glowing, almost too glowing. That worried him. You understand the situation here, Marcus said. It wasn't a question. 4 children, ages 2.5, severe cerebral palsy, non-verbal, non-ambulatory, significant care needs. I understand. There's a medical protocol. He slid a thick binder across the desk. Feeding schedules, positioning schedules, therapy schedules, medication schedules. You follow it exactly. No improvising, no bonding, no hope speeches. The doctors have made their prognosis clear. These children will not walk, they will not talk. Your job is to keep them comfortable and safe, nothing more. Angela's eyes stayed steady on his. And if I believe they're capable of more, Marcus's jaw tightened. Then you'd be wrong, and you'd be fired. Silence hung between them. Do we have an understanding, Miss Bailey? Angela nodded slowly. We have an understanding. But Marcus saw something flicker behind her eyes, something he couldn't quite read. Defiance, pity, determination. He didn't trust it. You start Monday, 7 a.m. The night nurse will brief you on overnight updates. You will be watched. He gestured vaguely toward the ceiling where a camera was mounted. Every room has surveillance for the children's protection and yours. I understand, Angela said again. She stood, extended her hand. Marcus looked at it for a long moment, then he shook it once, briefly, and let go. Don't make me regret this, he said. Angela met his eyes. I won't, Mr. Ashford. She walked out, and Marcus sat alone in his office, already pulling up the security app to test the camera angles in the therapy wing. He didn't believe her, didn't believe anyone anymore, but he needed help. The night nurse couldn't cover 24 hours, and he couldn't do it himself. Couldn't face his children's limitations every single day, couldn't watch them struggle and fail and remain trapped in bodies that didn't work. So he'd hired her, the 12th attempt, the 12th chance to be disappointed. He was already preparing for it. Monday morning, Angela arrived at 6:53 a.m. Marcus watched through the front entrance camera as she parked her Honda Civic, 12 years old, rust on the rear panel, and walked up the stone pathway carrying a small backpack. She wore scrubs, simple sneakers, no jewelry except a small cross necklace. Marcus zoomed in. The cross was silver, inexpensive. She rang the doorbell. The housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, let her in. Marcus switched cameras, watched Angela follow Mrs. Chen down the marble hallway toward the therapy wing. Her steps were quiet, measured. She didn't gawk at the artwork on the walls or the chandelier in the foyer, didn't seem impressed or intimidated by wealth. That bothered him. People were always impressed, or they pretended not to be, which was the same thing. They reached the therapy wing. The night nurse, Patricia, looked exhausted. She'd been up since 7 p.m. the previous evening. Marcus turned up the volume on his monitor. Sophia had a rough night, Patricia was saying, gesturing to the smallest wheelchair. Increased muscle spasms around 2 a.m. I gave her the prescribed muscle relaxant. She settled around 4. Angela knelt beside Sophia's wheelchair. She didn't touch the child, just studied her face. Does she respond to music? Angela asked. Patricia frowned. Respond? Does her breathing change? Does she turn toward sound? I don't know. We don't usually. Okay. Angela stood. I'll pay attention today. She moved to Nathan's wheelchair. And him? Nathan's stable. He ate well last night, 6 ounces. took his meds without issue. Angela looked at Nathan for a long moment. His hands were clenched tight, his small body rigid. "His hands are always like this?" she asked. "Always." "Has anyone tried gentle range of motion exercises outside of scheduled therapy?" Patricia hesitated. "The protocol doesn't call for—" "I'm just asking what's been tried." Marcus's jaw tightened. She'd been here 8 minutes and was already questioning the protocol. He reached for his phone, then stopped. "Wait. Watch first. Gather evidence, then fire her." Angela spent her first hour just observing. She didn't follow the schedule, didn't start feeding routines or medication administration. She just sat in the center of the room, cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by 4 wheelchairs arranged in a half circle. She watched the children, studied them. Marcus watched her. "What are you doing?" he muttered to the screen. At 8:15, she finally moved. She stood, walked to her backpack, and pulled out a small Bluetooth speaker. Marcus's finger hovered over the intercom button. She set the speaker on the shelf and pressed play. Soft piano music filled the room, something classical. Mozart, maybe, or Chopin. Marcus watched Sophia's face on the monitor. The little girl's head turned, just slightly, just a few degrees toward the sound. Angela noticed. She knelt beside Sophia's wheelchair, positioning herself in the child's line of sight. "You hear that, sweetheart?" Angela's voice was gentle. "That's Debussy. My grandmother used to play this. Clair de lune. It means moonlight." Sophia's eyes, usually unfocused, seemed to track toward Angela's face. Marcus leaned closer to the screen. "You like it," Angela whispered. "I can tell." She stayed there, kneeling for 5 full minutes, just letting Sophia listen. Then she moved to Nathan, positioned herself beside him close enough that he could feel her warmth. "Hey, buddy," she said softly. "I'm Angela. I'm going to be spending time with you, all of you." Nathan's clenched fists didn't open, but his breathing changed. Slower, steadier. Angela noticed that too. Marcus watched her move from child to child. Oliver, then Grace. With each one, she spoke quietly, introduced herself, let them hear the music. She wasn't following protocol, wasn't checking vitals or administering meds or starting feeding routines. She was just being present. Marcus's throat felt tight. When was the last time he'd done that? When was the last time he'd just sat with his children? Not as a father reviewing therapy reports or calculating specialist costs. Just sat with them. He couldn't remember. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button and like this video. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. If you've ever felt like hope was too risky, like believing again might break you, this story is for you. Sometimes miracles don't ask for permission. They just show up. That afternoon, Angela broke protocol completely. It was 2:30 p.m. Scheduled therapy time with the licensed physical therapist wasn't until Thursday, but Angela pulled Nathan's wheelchair to the center of the room, locked the wheels, and knelt in front of him. Marcus watched from his office, coffee growing cold into some on his hand. Angela gently took Nathan's right arm, the one that stayed rigid at his side, and began moving it slowly, up, down, gentle, rhythmic motions. "That's it," she murmured. "We're just reminding your muscles what they can do." Nathan's arm stayed stiff at first, but after several minutes, Marcus saw it. The tension released, just slightly. The arm moved more freely in Angela's hands. She worked for 20 minutes, then switched to his left arm, then his legs. Marcus's mind screamed at him to stop this. Call her. Fire her. This wasn't prescribed therapy. She wasn't a licensed PT. She was breaking the rules he'd explicitly laid out. But he didn't call, because when Angela finished and wheeled Nathan back to his spot, the little boy's hands, clenched in permanent fists for 2.5 years, opened slightly. Just for a moment. But they opened. Marcus stared at the screen. He rewound the footage, watched it again. Nathan's fingers had moved. That evening, Marcus couldn't focus on work. He sat in his office with quarterly reports open on his laptop, but the numbers meant nothing. His eyes kept drifting to the live security feeds displayed on the monitor mounted to his wall. Angela was in the therapy room preparing the children for their evening routine. She moved between them with quiet efficiency, changing Sophia, adjusting Oliver's positioning, checking Grace's feeding tube connection. But she did something else too, something not in the protocol. She sang, not loudly, not performatively, just soft humming while she worked. A melody Marcus didn't recognize, something old, gentle, like a lullaby passed down through generations. Grace's eyes, usually squeezed shut, opened slightly. Marcus's breath caught. He zoomed the camera closer. Grace was looking at Angela, actually tracking her movements as she moved around the room. Angela noticed. She smiled and knelt beside Grace's wheelchair. "There you are, sweet girl," she whispered. "I wondered when you'd want to see me." She stayed there for a long moment, just letting Grace look at her. Marcus's chest felt strange, tight and loose at the same time. When was the last time Grace had opened her eyes for more than a few seconds? He tried to remember, couldn't. By the end of the first week, Marcus had compiled a mental list of protocol violations. Unauthorized music daily, non-prescribed range of motion exercises multiple times daily, talking to the children like they understood constantly, bringing personal items from home, colorful blankets, a small stuffed elephant, children's books, spending unproductive time just sitting with them. Every morning, 7 o'clock and 7:15, he should fire her. Instead, he found himself pulling up old footage every night, watching it over and over. Day 3, Angela reading a children's book to Oliver, something about a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Oliver's eyes stayed open the entire time, 15 minutes. That was a record. Day 4, Angela doing gentle leg exercises with Grace, moving her small limbs in walking patterns. Left, right, like teaching muscles something they'd never learned. Grace's foot twitched, actually twitched, intentionally. Day 5, Angela holding Sophia during feeding time instead of using the adaptive positioning chair, cradling her like a baby. Sophia's muscle spasms, usually constant, quieted. She finished her entire bottle for the first time in weeks. Marcus watched it all through screens. He told himself he was gathering evidence, documenting her failures so he could justify termination. But that wasn't true anymore. He was watching because something was happening, something he didn't understand and didn't trust, but couldn't look away from. Week 2, Tuesday afternoon. Marcus left his office and walked down the hallway toward the therapy wing. He told himself he needed to inspect the new equipment that had been delivered, the upgraded standing frame for Oliver, the latest adaptive seating for Nathan. But when he reached the door and heard Angela's voice inside, he stopped. She was reading, not a medical manual, not a therapy guidebook, a children's story. Everyone told him, "Turtles can't fly," Angela read, her voice gentle and clear. But the little turtle didn't listen. He climbed to the top of the hill every single day, and every single day he tried. Marcus peered through the crack in the door. The children were arranged in a semicircle around her. She sat on the floor, cross-legged, the book open in her lap. Her eyes moved between the pages and their faces, checking, connecting. "Did he ever fly?" she asked them, like they could answer. "What do you think?" Silence. But Nathan was looking at her, actually looking, not through her, at her. "Well," Angela continued, "he never flew like a bird. But you know what? Every time he climbed that hill, his legs got stronger, and one day he climbed so high he could see the whole world, and that was better than flying." She closed the book and set it aside. "You know why I like that story?" she asked the children. "Because the turtle didn't give up. Everyone told him it was impossible, but he tried anyway. And that's what you're doing. Every single day, you're trying, and I see it, even if nobody else does." Marcus's throat closed. He stepped back from the door. His chest felt like something was cracking open inside it. He walked back to his office without entering the room. That night, Marcus pulled up the footage from 11 p.m. The therapy wing should have been dark. The night nurse should have transferred the children to their medical beds an hour ago, but light glowed from inside. Angela was still there. Marcus leaned closer to the monitor. She sat on the floor in the center of the room, surrounded by 4 wheelchairs. The children should have been asleep, but they were still with her. She wasn't doing exercises, wasn't following any schedule. She was just sitting with them, humming that same melody. Something about it felt sacred, private. Marcus turned up the volume. Angela reached up and touched Sophia's hand where it rested on her armrest. Didn't grab it, just laid her fingers over it gently. "You did so good today," she whispered. "Did you know that? You held your head up for almost 10 whole minutes. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you." Sophia's fingers curled slightly, just a small movement, but intentional. Marcus's hands gripped the edge of his desk. Angela moved to Nathan. She adjusted his blanket, tucking the edges around his small body, even though it didn't need adjusting. Her hands moved with such gentleness, like he was made of something precious. "Sweet boy," she murmured. "Your hands opened today, just for a second, but I saw it. You're so much stronger than anyone knows. I see it, even if they don't." Nathan's breathing changed. Slower, calmer, the way a child breathes when they feel safe. Then Angela turned to Oliver. She smoothed his hair back from his forehead. "You were so alert today," she said softly, "watching everything, taking it all in. There's so much going on in that beautiful mind of yours, isn't there?" Oliver's eyes were closed, but his small chest rose and fell steadily. Finally, Angela knelt beside Grace's wheelchair. She lifted the little girl's tiny hand and pressed it against her own cheek, eyes closing. "I see you," she whispered. "All of you. Every piece. You're not broken, baby. You're not damaged. You're just waiting. And I'll wait with you, as long as it takes." A tear slipped down Angela's cheek. Marcus stared at the screen. This woman, this stranger, was sitting in his house at 11 o'clock at night, crying over his children, talking to them like they understood, like they mattered, like their lives meant something beyond medical charts and therapy schedules. When was the last time he'd done that? When was the last time he'd just held them, not as a worried father calculating costs or reviewing reports, just as their dad, just being present? He couldn't remember. The realization hit him like a fist to the chest. Marcus closed the laptop slowly. He sat in the darkness of his office and thought about Elena. What would she say if she could see him now, see what he'd become? A man who watched his children through screens, a man so afraid of losing more that he'd stopped being present for what remained. She would hate this, would hate him. Elena had wanted children more than anything. 7 years of trying, 4 rounds of IVF, 3 miscarriages that broke her heart each time. And when she finally got pregnant with quadruplets against all odds, she'd cried for 3 days straight. Happy tears, grateful tears. Marcus remembered the nursery she'd designed. Pale green walls, a mural of a forest with woodland creatures, 4 cribs arranged in a square so the babies could see each other when they woke up. That nursery sat empty now. The children slept in medical beds in the therapy room, adjustable frames, safety rails, monitors tracking their vitals through the night. The green room with the forest mural had become storage for equipment they'd tried once and abandoned. Marcus stood and walked to the window. The garden sat dark below, moonlight catching the edges of untrimmed hedges. The fountain in the center hadn't run in over a year. Elena used to talk about teaching their children to swim in that fountain, about summer afternoons playing in the water, laughing, making memories. She'd never gotten the chance. Marcus pressed his forehead against the cold glass. "I'm failing them," he whispered to the empty room. "I'm failing you." Week 3 began with a confrontation Marcus didn't plan. He'd watched Angela break protocol for 17 days straight, watched her do exercises that weren't prescribed, play music that wasn't approved, talk to his children like they could understand. And worse, watched his children respond. Small things, tiny improvements, things he told himself meant nothing. But Tuesday afternoon, he couldn't take it anymore. He left his office and walked down the hallway toward the therapy room. His footsteps echoed against the marble. Each step felt heavier than the last. He didn't knock, just pushed the door open and stood there. Angela was on the floor with Grace. She had the little girl's legs in her hands, moving them slowly, rhythmically, left, right, like she was teaching Grace's muscles to remember something they'd never learned. She looked up when the door opened, no surprise in her eyes, no fear, just calm acknowledgement. "Mr. Ashford, what are you doing?" His voice came out harder than he intended. Angela didn't stop the movement. "Motor pattern training. It helps build neural pathways." "That's not in the protocol." "No, sir, it's not." Marcus stepped into the room. "I gave you specific instructions. Follow the medical plan. No improvising, no experimental treatments." Angela gently lowered Grace's legs and stood. She wiped her hands on her scrubs and faced him directly. "The medical plan has them sitting in wheelchairs all day with minimal stimulation," she said evenly. "That's not treatment. That's maintenance." Marcus's jaw tightened. The doctors gave you a prognosis based on statistics," Angela interrupted. Her voice stayed even, but something fierce lived beneath the surface. "They looked at scans and charts and told you what usually happens. They didn't tell you what's possible." "They're specialists," Marcus said. "They've seen hundreds of cases like this." "Have they seen your children?" The question hung in the air. Marcus stared at her. "Excuse me?" Angela took a breath. "Your children aren't statistics, Mr. Ashford. They're not case studies or data points. They're 4 individual human beings with their own potential, and they deserve someone who sees them, not their diagnosis." Heat rose in Marcus's chest. "You think you know better than doctors who've studied this for decades." "I think I know that giving up on a child is the one thing guaranteed to fail." Silence. Marcus's hands were shaking. From anger or something else, he couldn't tell. "You're filling their heads with false hope," he said quietly. "When this doesn't work, and it won't, they'll be devastated." Angela looked at him for a long moment. Something shifted in her eyes. Not pity, something deeper. Sadness, maybe. For him. "They're 2.5 years old, Mr. Ashford. They don't know what false hope is. They only know what they feel, and right now they feel someone believing in them." She paused. "Maybe for the first time." The words landed like a slap. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. His mind screamed at him to fire her, right now, call the agency, have her replaced by morning, but his feet wouldn't move. Because deep down, in a place he'd locked away, a voice whispered something he didn't want to hear. What if she's right? Angela turned back to Grace, kneeling beside her wheelchair. "You hired me to care for them," she said softly, not looking at Marcus. "That's what I'm doing." She resumed the leg movements, gentle, patient, consistent. Marcus stood there watching her ignore him, watching her choose his children over her job security, over pleasing him. He should fire her. Instead, he turned and walked out. He didn't say another word, but he didn't fire her either. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat at his desk with a termination letter open on his laptop. The cursor blinked at the end of the first sentence, patient and unforgiving. "Dear Miss Bailey, effective immediately, your services are no longer required." He'd written those words 11 times before. Different names, same outcome. His fingers knew the rhythm. Type the letter, call the agency, sign the paperwork, move on, but tonight his hands wouldn't cooperate. Marcus stared at the screen until his eyes ached. Then he minimized the document and pulled up the security footage instead. The house was quiet, lights dimmed. Everyone should have been asleep hours ago. But Angela was still in the therapy room. Week 4 arrived and Marcus stopped pretending he wasn't obsessed. Every night after the house went dark, he'd sit in his office and pull up hours of footage, fast-forwarding through empty hallways, pausing on moments that made his chest tight, rewinding scenes he needed to see again and again. Angela had changed the therapy room. Small things at first. She'd moved the wheelchairs closer together so the children could see each other, replaced the sterile white blankets with colorful ones she'd brought from home, added 3 plants by the window, real ones, not plastic. The children need to see things grow, she'd told Mrs. Chen when the housekeeper asked about them. Marcus didn't stop her. He should have. It wasn't protocol, but watching the room transform from cold and clinical to warm and lived in did something to him he couldn't name. Then the real changes started. Thursday afternoon, the licensed physical therapist arrived for the children's weekly session. Dr. Patterson had been coming for 20 months. Professional, thorough, consistently disappointed by the lack of progress. Marcus watched through the camera as she examined each child. Muscle tone, joint flexibility, reflexes. She started with Nathan, moved his arm, then his leg. Her hands paused. She did it again, frowning slightly. Marcus leaned toward the screen. Dr. Patterson looked up and called Angela over. They spoke quietly, heads bent together. Marcus turned up the volume but could only catch fragments. Significant improvement in muscle tone. This is unusual. What specific exercises have you been doing? Angela explained something, gesturing with her hands. Dr. Patterson nodded slowly, writing on her clipboard. Then she moved to Sophia, Oliver, and Grace, examining each one with renewed attention. When she finished, she stood and looked at Angela for a long moment. "Keep doing whatever you're doing," Dr. Patterson said. "I'll adjust the official protocol to include your methods. This is remarkable progress." Marcus sat back in his chair. His heart was pounding. That night, he didn't just watch current footage. He went back. Day by day, week by week. He watched Angela on the floor with Nathan, moving his legs in walking patterns. Over and over, the same movement, the same rhythm. Patient, steady, never frustrated, never giving up. He watched her hold Sophia's hands, helping her bear weight on her feet for just seconds at a time. The little girl's legs trembling, then holding, then trembling again. But each day she held a little longer. He watched her with Oliver doing arm exercises to music, his tiny limbs moving slowly at first, then smoother, more controlled. He watched her with Grace, reading stories with such animation that the little girl's eyes stayed open for 20 minutes straight, tracking every movement, every expression. Marcus pulled up footage from the first week Angela arrived. The children sat still in their wheelchairs, vacant, distant, unresponsive. Then footage from yesterday. Nathan reaching for a toy across his tray. Sophia holding her head steady for 15 minutes. Oliver making sounds, not words, but intentional vocalizations. Grace smiling at something Angela said. The difference was undeniable. Marcus's hands trembled on the keyboard. He opened a new browser window and typed neuroplasticity in children with cerebral palsy. Articles flooded the screen. Medical journals, case studies, research papers from universities he recognized. He clicked the first one. Early intervention in pediatric cerebral palsy cases has shown remarkable results in neural pathway development. The infant and toddler brain demonstrates extraordinary plasticity. He clicked another. Repetitive motor pattern training can stimulate the brain to form new connections, bypassing damaged areas. Consistent targeted intervention has resulted in mobility, outcomes far exceeding initial prognosis. And another. The critical window for neuroplasticity in CP patients is birth to age 3. Intensive early intervention during this period. Marcus read until his eyes burned, until the words blurred together, until 3 a.m. crept past and the house sat silent around him. Everything Angela had said, the neural pathways, the brain's ability to rewire itself, the importance of early intervention, It was all there, in black and white, published in medical journals, and he'd never looked, not once in 3 years. He'd taken those first doctors at their word, accepted their verdict like a death sentence, stopped researching, stopped questioning, stopped hoping. Marcus closed the laptop and sat in darkness. His children were improving, actually improving, doing things those initial specialists said they'd never do. And he'd almost fired the woman responsible, twice. His stomach turned. For 3 years, he'd poured money into maintaining his children's limitations. Expensive wheelchairs, medical equipment, nurses who kept them comfortable in their diagnosis, but he'd never once fought for something more. Angela had been here 4 weeks, making $15 an hour, and she'd accomplished what his millions hadn't touched, because she believed. And he'd stopped believing the day Elena died. Friday afternoon, Marcus sat in his office reviewing quarterly reports. Numbers blurred on the screen. He couldn't focus. It was almost 3 o'clock. Angela would be finishing the children's afternoon exercises. Music first, then motor pattern training, then reaching exercises. He'd watched the routine so many times he had it memorized. His phone buzzed. Motion alert. Living room. Marcus frowned. The children were supposed to be in the therapy room at this hour. He picked up his phone and opened the security app, expecting to see Angela moving them for a snack or a change of scenery. The image took a moment to register. 4 wheelchairs sat against the wall, empty. Marcus's stomach dropped. His first thought was panic. Something happened, an emergency. The nurse had to rush them somewhere. Then he saw them. Center of the living room, hardwood floor gleaming in the afternoon light. Sophia, Nathan, Oliver, Grace, standing. Marcus's breath stopped. His 4 children, his paralyzed children, the children doctors said would never stand. They were upright, wobbly, shaking, but standing on their own 2 feet. Angela knelt in front of them, about 6 feet away. Her arms stretched wide open, tears streamed down her face. "Come on, babies," she whispered. "Come to me. You can do it. 1 step." Marcus couldn't breathe. Nathan moved first. His small foot lifted from the ground, hovered, then landed again. An inch forward. A step. Marcus's hand flew to his mouth. Sophia went next, more cautious. Her legs trembled violently, but she moved. 1 foot, then the other. 2 steps. A sound escaped Marcus's throat, something between a gasp and a sob. Oliver followed, arms out for balance. 3 small, shaking steps. Then Grace, the smallest, the one who kept her eyes closed. She stood there, trembling. Angela reached toward her. "You can do it, sweet girl. I'm right here." Grace's foot lifted. It came down. Another lift. Another step. 4 steps. Marcus watched his youngest daughter walk toward Angela's outstretched arms. His phone slipped from his fingers. It clattered against the desk, but he didn't hear it. His knees buckled. Marcus slid down from his chair, back scraping against the desk until he sat on the floor. His legs wouldn't hold him. On the phone screen, face down but still playing, he could hear Angela's voice. "Yes, oh my God, yes, look at you, look at what you're doing." The children reached her. She gathered all 4 into her arms, pulling them against her chest, sobbing openly. "I knew it," she cried. "I knew you could. I knew it." Marcus sat on his office floor, unable to move. Tears poured down his face. His whole body shook. 3 years. 3 years of doctors saying never. 3 years of specialists confirming impossible. 3 years of accepting that his children would spend their lives in wheelchairs. And there they were, standing, walking, reaching toward a woman who refused to believe what the world told her. Marcus pressed both hands against his face and wept. Not quiet tears, not controlled grief. This was something deeper, something breaking open inside him that had been locked away since the day Elena died. Every failure, every betrayal, every night spent watching screens instead of holding his children, the shame, the fear, the hope he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten it existed. It all came flooding out in waves that shook his entire body. His children could walk. His children could walk, and he'd almost given up on them. Marcus didn't know how long he sat on that floor. Minutes, maybe longer. When he finally found the strength to stand, his legs felt hollow. He grabbed the edge of the desk and pulled himself up. His phone lay face down, still showing the living room feed. He should go to them, should run down that hallway and hold his children and celebrate this impossible moment. But something stopped him, something dark and poisonous coiling in his chest. A stranger had done this. A woman he'd hired 4 weeks ago had accomplished what 3 years of his money and resources couldn't touch. She'd succeeded where he'd failed, and his children had walked to her, not to him, to her. Marcus walked to the living room on unsteady feet. The door was open. Angela sat on the floor, all 4 children in her lap. They were exhausted from the effort, small bodies limp against her chest. She held them like they were made of something precious. Her face was wet with tears, but she was smiling. She looked up when she sensed him there. Their eyes met. "Mr. Ashford," her voice was soft. "Did you see? This is inappropriate." The words came out, cold, sharp. Angela blinked. "I'm sorry." Marcus stepped into the room. His hands were shaking, but his voice stayed controlled. "What you're doing here, it's inappropriate, dangerous. You're pushing them beyond what's safe, giving them false hope." "False hope?" Angela's eyes widened. "They just walked. You saw them. That's not false, it's reckless." Marcus's voice rose. "You're not a doctor. You're not a specialist. You have no idea what kind of damage you could be causing, forcing their bodies to do things they're not capable of." "They are capable." Angela stood carefully, still holding Sophia. "You just saw proof of that." "I saw 4 children who are going to be devastated when they can't do it again," Marcus shouted. "When reality sets in and they realize this was just a fluke, just one moment that won't last." He stopped. Because it wasn't about the children's disappointment. It was about his shame, his jealousy, his rage that someone else had broken through when he'd given up. Angela saw it too. He could tell by the way her expression shifted, from confusion to understanding, from defensiveness to something that looked like pity. "This isn't about what's best for them," she said quietly. "This is about you. Get out." Silence. "Mr. Ashford, get out of my house." His voice was ice. "You're fired, effective immediately. I'll have your final check sent to you. Leave your access card with Mrs. Chen on your way out." Angela stared at him. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. You've violated protocol repeatedly. You've acted outside your scope of practice. You've endangered my children. I've helped your children." Tears spilled down Angela's cheeks now. "I've done what you were too afraid to do. I believed in them when you'd already buried them." "Leave," Marcus roared. "Now, before I call security." The children startled at his voice. Grace began to cry. Then Nathan. Then all 4 of them, their small bodies shaking with confusion and fear. Angela gathered them closer, trying to soothe them. "Shh, babies, it's okay, Don't touch them." Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. "Mrs. Chen." The housekeeper appeared in the doorway, face pale. "Please escort Miss Bailey out immediately." Angela looked at Marcus one more time. Her face was wet, her eyes devastated. But she didn't beg, didn't plead for her job. She just carefully transferred each child back to their wheelchair, kissed each small forehead, and whispered something Marcus couldn't hear. Then she walked out. She didn't look back. The house returned to silence. Cold, pressing silence. Within 3 days, the children stopped responding, stopped making sounds. Sophia wouldn't hold her head up. Nathan's hands clenched back into fists. Oliver stared at walls. Grace closed her eyes and wouldn't open them. They'd regressed completely. Marcus hired a new caregiver, a middle-aged woman with impeccable credentials and 0 emotional investment. She followed protocol perfectly. The children deteriorated. Marcus stopped sleeping. He'd sit in his office at night pulling up old footage of Angela with the children, watching them laugh, reach, respond, watching them walk. 1 week after firing Angela, Mrs. Chen found him in his office at 4 a.m., footage paused on the screen showing Grace's first steps. "You made a mistake," she said simply. Marcus didn't look at her. "I protected my children. You destroyed the only good thing that's happened in this house since Miss Elena died." Mrs. Chen's voice was firm. "And you know it." She left him sitting there. Marcus found the drawings 2 days later. He was in the therapy room going through storage bins when he found them tucked into Angela's old bag, the one she'd forgotten in her hurry to leave. 4 pieces of construction paper, crayon drawings, except the children couldn't draw, couldn't hold crayons. But there they were, messy scribbles, handprints. Angela must have helped them, guided their hands. Each paper had the same thing written in Angela's neat handwriting at the bottom: "I love Miss Angela." "Sophia, I love Miss Angela." "Nathan, I love Miss Angela." "Oliver, I love Miss Angela." Grace Marcus's hands shook holding them. His children loved her, and he'd thrown her out. He found her address in the employment file, a modest neighborhood 40 minutes away, 3rd-floor walk-up in a building that had seen better decades. Marcus parked his Mercedes on the street and walked up cracked concrete steps. He'd never felt more out of place. He knocked on apartment 3C. A woman answered, older, 50s maybe, Angela's mother based on the resemblance. Her eyes narrowed when she saw him. "You've got some nerve. I need to speak with Angela." "She doesn't want to speak with you. Please, The woman stepped closer, voice low and fierce. "You humiliated my daughter, fired her for doing her job, for caring too much. She came home sobbing for 3 days straight, not because she lost a paycheck, but because she lost those babies she loved." Marcus's throat closed. "I made a mistake. You think? Please, just 5 minutes." "No." She started to close the door. "Wait." Marcus pulled the drawings from his jacket. "Please, give her these, from the children." Angela's mother looked at the papers. Her expression softened slightly. She took them. "I'll give them to her, but don't come back here." The door closed. Marcus stood in the dim hallway, staring at the peeling paint. He'd never felt smaller in his life. 3 days later, his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" "Mr. Ashford," Angela's voice, quiet, cautious. "My mother gave me the drawings." Angela. Relief flooded through him. "Thank you for calling. I'll come back." Marcus's breath stopped. "You will?" "On one condition." Her voice was firm now. "You actually show up. You be present. You work from home at least 3 days a week. You learn to be their father, not their warden. And you never, ever give up on them again." "I won't. I swear I won't." "I'm serious, Mr. Ashford. If I come back and find you hiding in your office, watching through cameras instead of being with them, I'm gone for good." "I understand." Silence. "I'll be there Monday morning, 7 a.m. "Thank you," Marcus whispered. "Thank you." Monday morning, Angela walked through the door. The children's reaction was instantaneous. Nathan made a sound, a cry of joy. Sophia's whole face lit up. Oliver's eyes went wide. Grace's eyes flew open. Angela knelt, and all 4 children reached for her from their wheelchairs. "I'm here," she said, tears streaming. "I'm here. I'm staying." Marcus watched from the doorway, not from his office, not through a screen. He was there, present. Angela looked up at him. She didn't smile, but she nodded slightly. It was enough. 6 months later, the house had transformed. Marcus worked from home 4 days a week. He'd learned the therapy routines, learned to read his children's cues, learned to believe in small miracles. Angela had become Miss Angela, part caregiver, part family. The children were walking regularly now, 20, 30 steps at a time. Sophia could say 3 words, Dada, Mama, looking at Elena's photo, and Gala, her version of Angela. One afternoon, Marcus sat in the garden with all 4 children. They were on a blanket, playing with blocks, while Angela prepared their snacks. A monarch butterfly landed on Grace's hand. She watched it, mesmerized, then looked up at Marcus. "Mama?" she asked. Marcus's eyes filled. "Yeah, sweetheart, that's Mama. She's here, she's been watching, and she's so proud of you." The butterfly stayed for a long moment, then flew away. Marcus looked at his children, really looked at them, and felt something he'd thought was dead. Hope, real hope, the kind that costs everything and gives back more. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. More challenges, certainly, more work, but for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Ashford wasn't afraid of tomorrow, because he finally understood. Miracles don't need permission, they just need someone brave enough to believe they're possible. Final CTA. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.